So let's continue chopping it up about this Illuminati. The Illuminati, the new Illuminati, which is really the old Illuminati. I think the real official old Illuminati, which were the scientists, they're out of the 15th century. If I'm not mistaken, the encyclopedia should have the facts stated underneath this video. It should be tagged as its own separate footnote, so to speak. But what's so interesting about that particular century is, from a numerological perspective, you're dealing with Aphrodite and the Shining One aspect. 15th century, Illuminati, this is when they were formed, right? So with that, 6 is the planetary number of Venus, according to Jewish mystic gematria. So with that, you're getting love, aesthetics. What you're basically getting is the construct for the reality that you're in. This was Venus's job, Taurus's job, and on a sound vibrational reality, manifestational level, this was Lucifer's job as leader of the musicians, because that's how heaven's hierarchy is structured. It ascends by choirs. So it goes from larger groups of singers to smaller groups of singers to eventually just meditators who emit a singular sound or a chant. So the higher up you go from the music back to the musings. Muse means to think. And to think is to let there be light on something. Because to think about something is to bring knowing to it. And knowingness is an allusion to the sun. So this is the illumination process that the real Illuminati points to. The true original Illuminati. The non-conspiratorial Illuminati. And where do you see illumination stated as a word? As a word, where do you see illumination stated? In the Minions trilogy, or I believe it might be 4 parts, if I'm not mistaken. But you notice how it starts with despicable me's. What is despicable? The growth of a villain. Why am I saying the growth of a villain? The growth of the shadow side. Because not only is that the play in the tone of movies, you can start with Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, right on to the Rise of Gru. Because we're still dealing with the exaltation of the villain, which is an allegory to the times we're in, being in the custodial care, guardianship of the left-hand path. The left-hand path usually represents villainy, opposition, antagonism, antipathy, antimony. So this is what you get with antithesis, opposition, right? The opposing side, because we're not dealing with a broken staff of existence. It is, for lack of better words, it is bipolar. It is 2 poles, 2 ends to the spectrum, what you would call good and evil, positive, negative, etc. Whatever your scale of contrast is. But illumination deals with this whole process of different light levels, and that being different knowledge levels, different levels of intellect. And when we say different levels of knowledge, you understand, we're talking about true knowledge being true intelligence, the way the mind thinks, the way the mind processes information. This is true illumination. To know facts and figures like trivia. This is not wisdom or true illumination, as it really is just the acquisition of information. Because if you're not discarding the meat from the bones, then you're not really gaining true knowledge. But you know what I mean? You're just collecting facts. But if you're not putting the facts together and you're not able to draw any conclusions, even having the solutions to a problem is pointless. Because these solutions have to be what? Put to use. So you always have the proverb. You always have to be pro-verb. That's what wisdom is attached to. There is no wisdom without an action. Even choosing to meditate is an action. Right? You're making a decision to alter your physical state. That is a decision. That is an action. This is what's connected to illumination. So you have the proverb. Wisdom is proverbs, proverbial, proverb versus anti-verb versus inert. It is proverb. For the understanding of the subject, you have to be proverb. So that you don't just have knowingness, but you have true experience. You can say that you know something rather than to just know about something. The conspiratorial rabbit hole surrounding the Illuminati has a lot to do with knowing about illumination rather than knowing what illumination is. So just knowing about it. So again, you have this opposite side of the pole being exalted, the left-hand path, and you have the rise of Gru. And the reason for Gru is past tense for grow. I believe past present, not past present, is another term. I don't want to confuse that, but it's a different way of saying it. So you can say you grow this, which is present tense verb, and you could say I grew this, past tense verb. So to say that even if the left hand path didn't get the necessary mainstream attention that it didn't receive, just because the left hand path did not receive its pedestal on the main scene, did not mean that it was not coming and did not mean that it was not growing. This is what's called the fruiting stage. Whenever botanists grow certain plants, some have to grow in the dark. It's not the light that makes all plants grow per se, but the blooming and the budding of the plant, the fruiting of it, the fruitage of it, the plumage of it usually blossoms in the dark like a mushroom does. Its development takes place in the dark, like old school film. To get the old picture, the ancient picture, the original frame, these things were developed in what? The dark room. So what is illumination? Illumination is digging into not the yellow sun, but the black sun, the central sun, the illuminator that empowers the universe with a light that is too bright to see. And that points to and links itself up with being non-discriminatory in the assimilation of information. Being able to look at things through a non-biased lens to say, I'm going to look at all the information that's available and make sense of it. Whatever kind of rhyme or reason it takes, but I'm going to make sense of it. I'm going to synthesize and synchronize this information. So this is illumination, because again, like I said in the last video, the true Illuminati is not concerned with what is good or what is evil. The Illuminati only cares about what the ideal's effects are on the populace. It's truly purely scientific. It is not a religion. It is not a secret society. It is not a group. It is not a clique. It is not a clan. It is not a country club. It is not a posse. It is not a monarch. It is not a banking cartel. The true Illuminati is none of these things. The true Illuminati is really the golden children of the golden ray. The ones born by the dagger. Remember the movie with Eddie Murphy, The Golden Child? They was carrying that kid around in a cage. And that was pointing to the future of the of where things are on a gender level too. Because the oversoul is the Ubermesh is stepping into androgynous spirit too. But again, there's two forms for androgynous expression. There's the more controversial that you see out in the world, expressed out and about with dress codes and different kinds of alterations. And then you also have what is considered spiritual androgyny, which is for a person to be both equally masculine and feminine in their understanding of dealing with the human soul. So to have that true illumination, to shine a indiscriminate light upon life. So that's what true androgyny is, and the androgynes and the whole idea of not putting one age above another. So not saying that, oh, the divine masculine in the days of patriarchy is better than the days of matriarchy. This is an error to do that, because in a dance, either party is going to have to lead at some point. There's going to be a point where she takes her step. There's going to be a point where he takes his step. But it's okay because they're holding hands. Typically in the dance, they're connected at the hands. So what does it mean for us to dance with one another? What does it mean to really manifest the true middle pillar of illumination? The difference in the ultimate equalizer between Jachin and Boaz. What does it mean to become purple, merging blue and green, merging fire and ice? What does it mean to be room temperature? To put these things together and make sense of it, to create a higher order, to see a wider range on the fractal, to be able to step back even further and see things. This is true illumination. So that's what the Illuminati is. It's a scientific group, a scientific concept, a scientific process, and maybe I said this already, but really a scientific mind, thinking scientifically. What this does for you on a spiritual level, to look at life scientifically, what it does for you spiritually, I know that sounds oxymoronic to say that, but what it does is it prevents you from being too attached. So it helps you with attachment, helps you master detachment, to not cry over spilled milk, to not fall apart over a single failed attempt, because you're not a failure unless you quit altogether. Anything else is attempts. They're not. If you win the game, people are not going to be talking about the shots you missed. You see that? So everything you do counts. It all matters. So that is illumination. And what is the color typically for that? Orange. Orange. Citrus. Vitamin C. Vitamin consciousness. Orange is another color for purity. It's another color for nobility. And of course, when you're looking at it with the fruit being the orange itself, the only fruit that is it's both a fruit and a color using the same name, which is interesting, right? And its own, not its own vitamin, but orange and orange are the same, whether it's the color or the fruit, which is a very, interdimensional concept, because that's one thing being two things, using the same name and being the same thing. So orange is what? The color of immunity. the boosting of immunity, the removing of phlegm, the removing of plaque, the clearing up of the system, right? The healing of the body. So it's connected to healing, connected to durability, and on a business magnate level, it's connected to having thick skin, not wearing your heart on your sleeve, having your boots strapped up and tough and ready. This is illumination. Notice how it's an illumination. And going back to the cartoon, they're minions, a whole bunch of yellow minions, and you can't really understand what they're saying, yet they saved the day. And they rally up under a leader. So what do you get there? Uniformity, right? Doesn't one of the minions have one eye? So you have this allusion to, for some that will look at life in a nihilistic, deterministic, dystopian future. They would say, oh, this is conformity. This is the beginning of us being enslaved. You can look at it through that lens, but you can also look at it as we're being unified. And although, just like the days of the Tower of Babel, our language cannot be understood, did not mean that our spiritual tower stopped being built. We were still able to build together, even though we couldn't build together. We were still able to build together, even though we couldn't build together. We were still able to understand each other, even though we didn't know each other's dialect as we were spread across the earth. But as we started to reach out across the world to each other, we began to understand each other again. And then we began to build a tower up, not of Babel, but of reason, of communication. Not of Babel where we don't understand each other and we're not on the same page, but not only are we just on the same page, but we're on the same sentence, on the same word in the same sentence. We're in unison, unified. That's illumination, because when the sun comes up, it shines on anything that isn't already hiding behind something. And we can get into that maybe in maybe a part 3 to this Illuminati thing. We may make a series out of this, because I just want to talk about it on a very practical level. That to illuminate, it just basically means to know all you can about something. And this is going to prompt you into actions to prove the validity of what you know, so that you can distinguish whether it is fact or simply an acquisition of information. Happy illumination.